1. Insights from the beginning of the Bible storyline. Insights from the beginning of the Bible storyline. Let me remind you how the Bible begins. It begins with a God who is completely good and self-contained and without needing us. Not a God who is somehow lonely and thinks, oh, if I could just make some image bearers who would love me and break out their guitars and sing worship songs, I'd be a lot happier. He's a God who is independent and happy, but who eventually makes things that are good, including human beings made in his image. The way the Bible construes this is highly varied, sometimes in symbol-laden language, but let's put it like this. There's God. And initially, people are so rightly related to him that they do love him with heart and soul and mind and strength. They are orientated toward him. If they wake up in the morning, their thoughts naturally go to him, and they truly adore him and understand truly that their being, their well-being, their way of understanding and relating to each other and to the entire created order derives from him. They are derived beings. He is an underived being. And therefore, they are rightly related to each other. But with the classic rebellion that Christians call the fall, then what happens is that each of these individuals made in his image wants to think of himself or herself as God. Instead of God being at the center, with the whole order around him, each wants to become at the center himself or herself. That means that God himself has got to be relegated. If he's not quite what I want him to be, then we'll make another God. We'll create gods in our own image. And besides that, I'm at the center of the universe, and you stupid twit, you think that you're the center of the universe. And so now suddenly, because I want to be God, and you want to be God, and she wants to be God, and over there they want to be God, then eventually you have all the things that we call social pathologies. Greed and jealousy and envy and rape and war and lust and malice and wretched gossip and on and on and on and on and on. All because we have to be at the center of the universe. Which is why Jesus insists that the fundamental commandment is to love God with heart and soul and mind and strength, which means the fundamental sin is not to love God with heart and soul and mind and strength. And the second is to love our neighbors as ourselves, which is a pretty easy thing to do if God really is at the center and we do love him with heart and soul and mind and strength. Otherwise, it's an impossible thing to do. So that at the beginning of the Bible, there is already a way of looking at reality that sees human beings not as pretty decent blokes who, unfortunately, are played with by a mischievous God who throws a tsunami in their direction every once in a while because basically he's a bit of a fraud and gets his kicks out of picking on people that are a lot smaller than he is. Rather, the Bible has a way of looking at human beings as already in rebellion, already set over against God. And if someone comes along and says, but I'm not against God. I mean, God's all right. I mean, he can mind his business and I can mind my business and we'll get along just fine. But already that is a failure to recognize God as God. The first responsibility in the Bible of creatures is to recognize their creatureliness. That is to say, we have been made by him and for him, and thinking of God as somehow other, who could just leave us alone and then we'd be happy and he can be happy, but just leave us alone, is already to lose sight of the way things are in the first place. That is, our first obligation is to recognize our creatureliness, to own him as God, and to love him with heart and soul and mind and strength. And that is where we find our deepest satisfaction, our deepest joy, our deepest identity. And apart from that, we are lost and in some measure corrupting one another and alienated from him and already judged, as it were, already condemned by experience, by nature, by choice. So the Bible does not look at human beings basically as essentially good, who can then be bowled over by the odd flood or the odd New Orleans hurricane or something like that. Rather, it sees us as people who already stand under the judgment of God. So that by and large, the Bible is not surprised by bad things that happen to us, although there are individuals in the Bible who are surprised. But by and large, the Bible as a whole is not surprised by that. By and large, the Bible expresses its surprise at the patience of God for not responding with greater anger than he does show. Now, that's just not the way most of us look at suffering and evil that comes our way. But by and large, that's the way the Bible fixes its lens on this sort of issue.